welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. We got Chris Wynn in studio. It's Monday. And obviously we've been following the breaking news that's taken place in regards to the Eric Garner chokehold death case. That situation, the NYPD has announced this morning that they have fired the police officer in that situation. And yeah, make no mistake about it, the only officer that should have lost a job, in my opinion, was that officer. But I'm going to take it a step further. I think there could have been criminal charges. Again, I'm not defending what that officer did by any stretch of the imagination. In no way, shape, or form. I think that officer, I would have been okay with involuntary manslaughter, something like that. I don't think he intentionally tried to kill the guy. I would have been okay with that. It'd be kind of like one of those things where you're drunk driving, right, and you kill somebody. Right. It wasn't your intent to kill somebody, but it was your actions that led to it, hence involuntary manslaughter. But with that being said, and again, I put the responsibility on the officer, but every single time we see a horrible situation where somebody loses their life, 9 out of 10 times it's because of non-compliance. Now, Garner, what was he doing? He was selling cigarettes. Did it really take 5 officers around the guy? No. Absolutely not. One officer, have a conversation with the guy, say, look, man, we know what you were doing. Knock it off. Maybe even cite him. Give him a ticket or something. Let him be on his way. 5 officers around the guy. So, of course, Garner, he gets very combative with the officers, which, I can understand his frustration to an extent, but you were breaking the law. Just own up to it and walk away. He was combative. He was non-compliant, but he didn't have a weapon on him. I don't think he posed a threat towards the officers in any way, shape, or form. This was wrong, period. But again, it goes back to what I always say. In many instances, not all, but in many instances, we can avoid these types of situations to escalate with police officers. I don't care what the color of your skin is. If you comply with officers and know how to talk to officers, yes, sir. What do you need from me, sir? Now, I get it. Garner was probably harassed by those officers before. Stop selling cigarettes. But with that being said, 5 officers, and then this guy loses a chokehold. I mean, give me a break. That guy should have probably been convicted of an involuntary manslaughter offense, in my opinion.
Is asking someone to stop selling cigarettes considered harassment, Brian?
I think when you have 5 or 6 police officers around somebody, it's kind of like jaywalking, in my opinion.
If you're breaking the law and a police officer sees you because you don't have a license or whatever it is, which I'm sure that he had required to have in New York, but if a police officer sees you breaking the law and says, hey, can you stop doing that? Is that being harassed?
But that's not what happened.
I don't think that's being harassed.
But you're not accurately describing what took place. That's not what happened. If one officer did that, I would not call that harassment. There were 5 or 6 officers around that guy. It doesn't take 5 or 6 officers. They have better things to do than to talk to somebody that it was selling cigarettes. Yes, in my opinion, in a way, that's harassment. It's kind of like if you were jaywalking in the street and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 police cars show up. Yeah, I would call that harassment. I absolutely would. I get what you're saying. If it was one officer having a conversation with Garner, number one, it wouldn't have escalated to that. It wouldn't. Garner sees 4 or 5 officers around him. I'm not saying he acted in the best fashion or appropriately. The man did not deserve to die. He didn't deserve to even have a chokehold around his neck.
And I agree with that entirely. But I don't think it was harassment.
So you think it's appropriate for 4 or 5 officers to show up when a guy is illegally selling cigarettes? You think that's appropriate? Is that an appropriate use of tax dollars? Is that what you want these officers to do? I don't think so.
He was just with a couple of officers, right?
There were more than 3 officers there.
Right.
And they tackled him to the ground.
And he was with them.
What do you mean he was with them?
He didn't call back up.
More officers showed up. This conversation started with 2 officers. Then all of a sudden it doubled to 4 officers. I've seen the whole video. It's ridiculous. Officers did not handle that properly. Why they put that guy in a chokehold is beyond me. That officer lost his job. I hope he never works again. And in my opinion, he should go to jail. Let's go quickly to the phone lines, the GCI Guys hotline, which is 257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation, 702-257-5396. We are going to first go to Brian. Brian, what's happening?
Hey, guys. As is usually the case, we have emotional misinformation or lack of information, even in this case. You got to remember that at the time this happened with Mr. Garner, it was the mayor of New York who put out a directive to the police captains to enforce this law aggressively. And what happened on the sidewalk that day was a sting operation. You had 2 undercover police officers coming by cigarettes from Mr. Garner, who had been arrested 30 times already for the same offense.
Okay, so what's your point? You're okay with a
So
strong
Brian,
arm chokehold?
Brian, are you basically
This man
justifying
is a
that?
350-pound man, 6 foot 7 inches tall, who did not comply with the officers.
All right, so Brian,
Now-
let me ask you a quick question. So you're basically, are you justifying the fact that Eric Garner was killed by this police officer who just got
No, I'm
fired
not.
from his job?
Are you aware that he also suffered from asthma, emphysema, and heart disease, and that they were a contributing factor to his death?
At the bottom line,
That's
hold
He's not
on,
alive, though.
hold on.
Of
What
the
does that have to
Brian,
do?
hold on,
report.
Brian. The bottom line is, if he wasn't in this chokehold, he would be alive, or at least he wouldn't have died that day. We all need to
Point
agree on
two.
that.
Point 2.
Do you- hold on,
There
before-
was a
hold on.
sergeant
Hold-
on the sidewalk observing this whole thing, a black police officer who was the sergeant.
We didn't
at
say
the
it was
time.
racism. We didn't say
Yeah.
it was race. So what does
It
that
was
have to do with
excessive
anything?
force.
Just
It
saying,
wasn't.
if he went over the line, then why should the sergeant be fired also?
Who's to say that the sergeant didn't make a mistake and didn't act in a pro? We're not even discussing
All I'm
that
saying
right
is
now.
you guys are. I'm trying to fill in the blanks. Okay?
What do you mean?
There's nothing to fill
there's
in.
nothing
The
to fill in.
chokehold was
You have
illegal.
not
That's why
mentioned any of the information I've just shared with you anytime you've talked about.
Okay, here's
Well,
why.
it doesn't-
Hold on a second. Here's why, Brian. This is what frustrates me sometimes about your opinions. Here's why. The bottom line is you talked about how fat the guy was, how he had heart disease and asthma, but the bottom line is if he's not in this chokehold, he doesn't die. So that is academic to the discussion. That's number one. That's number one. Number two, even if he was arrested 30 times, in fact, even if he was arrested 500 times, it is completely academic to this specific case because, in my opinion, based on the video, he did not pose a serious threat or harm to officers to be tackled to the ground and to be put into a chokehold. Now, I said to start this segment, if he just complied and he wasn't combative with the officers, it probably wouldn't have escalated to that. But I am not comfortable with 4 or 5 officers around a man who was selling cigarettes. I don't care if they were trying to enforce the law or not. Cite the guy a ticket. 1 officer, that's all it takes. It didn't mean 5 officers needed to be there. The man did not deserve to die. Period.
I agree. On that point, we agree, Brian.
Well, then why do we have to
100%.
take it further than that?
Well, then why are you trying to justify reasonings
I'm
behind?
not trying to justify what happened. What I'm trying to say is you guys keep bringing this stuff up. You know what? They marched in the streets the very next day after this happened. You know what the crowd did as they marched down the streets of New York? Hands up, don't shoot from the month before in Ferguson.
What does that have to
So
do
you've
with
got
my
one
opinions on this
lie
case?
Perpetuating more lies
Okay.
in this case.
Oh, I'm not lying. Brian,
It's not a lie,
I appreciate the call, Brian. You just said you agree with everything I said, and that's the bottom line. The man didn't deserve to die. He was put in a chokehold. The officer lost his job. It should have been involuntary manslaughter, period.
And he's bringing up the fact that he is 6'7", he is 350 pounds. He did have health. The health issues have nothing to do with it. The fact that he was arrested 30 times, that's why backup came, Brian. That's why they quote unquote harassed
They
him.
did not.
That's why
not
it wasn't.
true.
That's why it wasn't harassment.
They did not have his ID at the time, so they did not know his criminal history as far as I know. They didn't know his rap sheet.
If he had been arrested 30 times and the mayor of New York City had called down a crack on, I'm sure that there was a lobby of
Okay,
some
but here's the issue.
sort. A cigarette maker of some sort was paying X amount of dollars for that to take place. But I'm sure they knew exactly who he was,
Here's
especially the fact that he was 6'7", 350 pounds.
Police officers can't act in a certain way based on prior criminal history. The only way they act and the way they're trained is to act on the specific situation that is at hand. Let's take another phone call. 257-5396 is the number to call. The GCI phone guys line again, 702-257-5396. If you want to be a part of this conversation, let's go to Carl. Carl, what's going on?
Yeah, Brian. Hey,
Good.
I've talked to you before. I'm a retired psychologist. Remember, I had that do with Sanchez. Anyway,
Yes, sir.
I don't know if your caller screener told me I had to run out for a while. You mentioned earlier about you like a lot of dogs like to listen to your show. And did he give you the message? I said a lot of the dogs are probably more intelligent than a lot of your callers, but that's something else again.
I understand.
Okay, in regard to the Garner case, you left out one very important word, and nobody mentions it. It wasn't a chokehold. The word is illegal. It was an illegal chokehold under the New York law.
Yeah, no, you're right.
100% correct. Yes.
Illegal. So the cop committed a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Carl, let me ask you something, and thank you for bringing that up. That's a very, very, very important part of this case. Do you think that this officer, who, by the way, was just fired, that's the breaking news, do you think he should have been charged with maybe involuntary manslaughter? Because I do.
Definitely. It was a crime. to use. It's illegal to shoot somebody for just jaywalking.
Right, exactly.
It's illegal to use that chokehold. The chokehold has been outlawed.
Carl, here's the only. Yeah, I agree. Here's the only way I'd be okay with that: if he posed a serious physical threat, if they thought he had a weapon, if they had to subdue him because he was either a threat to officers or the general public, then I say use any means necessary to stop the threat. Yeah. But this wasn't that case, Carl. We all know that. This was a man, even if he was arrested 30 times for selling cigarettes, he did not pose a physical harm to the officers or to anyone else in that area. That is my problem. Now, if they tell him to put his hands behind his back, and, he declines to do that, there are other means that they can use besides tackling him and choking him.
Yeah, no, I watched the tape a number of times, and he was trying to explain himself
Right.
in a calm way. He really wasn't violent. He didn't grab a police officer
Right.
and attack them. I can understand that.
Yeah, this is not good. Yeah,
this officer did commit a crime. When you say something's illegal, to break that illegal law is a crime.
I agree.
It's illegal to rob. It's illegal to kill. It's illegal to steal. It's
Right.
illegal to, and that was an illegal
I agree,
act.
Carl, and thank you for bringing that up, by the way,
Sure.
Carl. I appreciate the phone call, and you're absolutely right. It was illegal what this officer did. Well, what would happen, Chris, if you or I, or maybe JD is having a rough morning like he had today, and he just showed up in studio and just gave me a chokehold? What would happen? Now, if I wasn't his friend, I would just call the police. I'd want him to get arrested. But what would happen? You would get arrested for assault.
Absolutely.
Okay?
That's exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is kind of there's no gray area here. Okay. Because, and the caller pointed out, and he's exactly right. When we're talking about, this is not police procedure that's proper. Okay. This is not something that the officer was, exercising that he learned from his training, okay? This was something that was done illegally that should not have happened, and it resulted in somebody losing their life,
Right.
okay, for selling cigarettes. And so, it's, to me, it's a cut and dry case with respect to the police officer.
Yeah.
Now, of course, police officers are going to receive preferential treatment when it comes to, whether or not, they're going to be either charged with a crime or in circumstances like this, because they're acting as a police officer, right, in their capacity of their job. So that's going to take precedent in a case like this. And they're going to. I'm not trying to say everybody gets special treatment as a cop. I'm saying that yes, they're going to look at this in a different way than they would look at it as if it was just two civilians
Right.
on the street. So that, I think, leads to him just getting fired, as opposed to what you proposed, Brian, and some of the callers have, where he should get charged with involuntary manslaughter.
If you're just joining us, by the way, we're talking about the Eric Garner case. Chief of police held a press conference saying that the officer involved in the Garner case has lost his job. That is the determination they came up with. So obviously there was wrongdoing here. You don't fire an officer for no reason. Very lucky that he's not going to jail. If you want to be a part of this conversation, give us a call, 257-5396. Again, that number is 257-5396. We'll continue to monitor this story as it plays on. I do want to mention this real quickly because I am a Bill Maher fan. I like Bill Maher's show. I've met the man before. I think he's extremely funny and talented. I do agree with a lot of his politics and what he has to say on his show, Real Time. I think it's a fantastic show. So he has been and I think Republicans like this, but can respect this about him, at least in the last 48 hours or so. He has been very outspoken in regard to this Israel thing and Tlaib and Omar. He is actually taking the side of Donald Trump and Israel because Tlaib and Omar have said some very anti-Semitic things in the past. Now, you could have your opinions and which way they go. I've heard both sides, and I'm kind of wishy-washy on this one, but I'll say this. Tlaib pulled a number on Israel, and she was very dishonest because she wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Israel saying, listen, I want to visit my 90-year-old grandmother. And Israel, I think, did the right thing. I give them credit. They granted her access to do that. So what does Tlaib decide to do? She says, no, thanks. She lied. You can't.
She pulled a rope-a-dope on
You
him.
can't do that when you're a congressperson or a politician. You don't want to mess with the Prime Minister of Israel. That's exactly what she did. She had one purpose of that letter, one purpose only, to try to make Israel look bad. And it is the same reason of why Omar is not being admitted to Israel. Listen, when I first heard this story, I disagreed with Donald Trump. I didn't like it when he was getting involved. But as time went on, I'm thinking to myself, maybe this wasn't such a bad decision.
And she tried to come off as a martyr of sorts by saying, "Oh no, I can't do that." You have a 90-year-old grandmother that you're choosing not to visit, and instead you're going to make an example of yourself.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
That's
an embarrassment.
I want you to respond to this, Chris. I just want to read the tweet that Talib said, and then I'll let you respond to that. So this is what Talib said in regards to Bill Maher. By the way, I'm putting Talib in the same category as Omar. I think they're both idiots.
You also love Bill Maher.
I do like Bill Maher, but I've been against Omar and Talib since the beginning. You know that. I haven't gotten there with Ocasio-Cortez yet, but Talib and Omar, I think they're hateful people. Let me read this Talib tweet. She says, maybe folks should boycott his show. She's talking about Bill Maher. I am tired of folks discrediting a form of speech that is centered on equality and freedom. This is exactly how they tried to discredit and stop the boycott to stand up against the apartheid in South Africa. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. Okay, she's an idiot. Okay, she has said horrible anti-Israel things about Jewish people. Same thing with Omar. She played with the fact that the prime minister granted her access to Israel, and then she declined it because she is an idiot and she should not be in Congress. I feel the same way about Omar.
Okay, I have a couple points on this because you guys have discussed this obviously for the past week or so since this story came into point. First of all, on the situation regarding Israel banning both of these lawmakers, I have no issue with it whatsoever, and this is why. Israel is a sovereign country, okay? They can do whatever they want. They can ban whoever they want for whatever reason they want, okay? So it's not like they're incumbent on American laws or America's society or America's way of life, the way we do things here. They do whatever they want. Okay, so they can ban Americans, they can ban American lawmakers, they can ban, Swedish businessmen. I don't really care. Okay, they are able to do whatever they want. The only issue I have here with this, and yes, there have been absolutely some disparaging remarks been made by both Representative Talib as well as Representative Omar with respect to Israel and to Jewish people. No question about it. Okay. I think you go a little bit overboard when you try to say things like they hate the Jewish people or they have a hatred for them. I think that's.
Do you want me to read some of the comments?
I think it's going too far. Let me finish my point. What the only issue I have with this, with respect to Donald Trump, is that I don't think the president of the United States should be, siding with another country when dealing with American lawmakers on issues like this. I don't think the president of the United States should be saying things that Donald Trump says about the lawmakers with respect to Israel. I think that the president should be on the side of Americans here, okay, and not on the side of another country against Americans.
I understand
so that is my entire viewpoint on this with respect to and we can debate all day long. And Brian and JD, you guys, along with others and Republicans especially, have been extremely critical of Representative Talib and Omar, and I get it, okay. But you also, I think you guys exacerbate the situation by overstating what it is they've said.
I understand.
Okay? And yes, I've heard the quotes.
I understand.
I know what they've said. I know Omar said that Israel has hypnotized the world. I get it. Okay, but this whole thing that basically their entire intention is to downgrade the Jewish people or to just blast Israel, I think is not accurate.
Well, we got to take a quick break. I understand your argument when you say the president shouldn't be involved in these type of things. I tend to agree with you there. What I'm trying to say is I don't feel sorry for them. I just want to read a few more quotes from Omar. Besides saying it's all about the Benjamins, Israel has hypnotized the world, as you said. She also said, may Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. Okay, she is just a hateful woman who is ignorant. I don't think Omar is very intelligent, and I hope she gets the hell out of Congress. I would never tell her to go back to her country or do what many of these racist buffoons like to do at Trump rallies. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. If you want to be a part of the show, 257-5396. You're listening to The Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. When we come back, Nevada regulators looking to revisit sportsbook registration rules. This is going to be kind of interesting. JD is going to give us the latest on that story. Also, the Antonio Brown saga with the helmet issue. Well, guess what? The Raiders are now speaking up on this, at least management is. They're not too happy with Antonio Brown because they've kind of had his back over the course of the last month or so. Not anymore. It's like either play or shut up. That's basically what they're saying. So we'll get to that. Also, a little Golden Knights info for you. The tickets have gone on sale this morning for the upcoming season. So we'll kind of give our thoughts on some of the biggest games on the schedule coming up. Certainly, I look at that San Jose Sharks game. That is just any game involving the San Jose Sharks in Las Vegas is going to be a huge game. And hopefully we'll have some different referees on that game. That's another story for another show. But so a lot of stuff in the sports world to get to. Of course, we got the college football season right around the corner. UNLV football, how many games do you think they're going to win this year? We'll get to that. It is amazing how college football just creeps up upon you, and we are almost there. So excited and hopeful for the UNLV football season. We'll see if they can get to 6 wins. And do you think it's a fair question to say if Tony Sanchez does not get to a bowl game? By the way, not to be compared with Steve Sanchez. Do you think that he loses his job? Well, we'll get to that and much, much more. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You are listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM 720 AM KDWN.